Getting too much spam and want to be able to better protect your personal data? Then try Incogni and get a 60% discount on an annual subscription when you use offer code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup. Click below to get started or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, welcome. Nice to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Been a bit of a week, hasn't it? That marathon reveal was a bit of a doozy and definitely stirred up plenty of discourse. You still can't pre-order a Switch 2 in the US, and that launch date is creeping up fast. And I personally have spent the week watching TikToks of 12-year-olds turning movie theaters into ground zeros thanks to the Minecraft movie. By the way, speaking of which, I actually watched the Borderlands movie for the first time this week, and it was just so much worse than even the bad reviews could have prepared me for. I actually bought the 4K Blu-ray just so I could see in detail how few fucks Cate Blanchett gave in this movie. 1 out of 10, absolute cinema. Anyway, plenty to get through this week, so let's not waste any more time. Here comes the news. Okay, so we're gonna talk about tariffs now, and I know some people don't want to hear about this, but the fact is, it's having a profound effect on the video games industry, affecting prices, availability, product launches, the works. Believe me, I don't like having to talk about tariffs any more than you like having to hear about them, but this is video game news, and so we're gonna have to talk about it. Right now, the whole world is still reeling from the effects of Trump's on-again, off-again tariff rollout, which plunged global markets into turmoil and still leaves them around 7% down from when this whole ordeal first began. While Trump has retreated from his initial tariff figures that imposed absurd 50% tariffs on countries with absolutely no hope of achieving a balance of trade with the US, a flat-out 10% across-the-board tariff is still in effect for all imports. The one notable exception to this is China, where last week Trump raised the tariff on Chinese goods to 145%, and overnight, Trump signed an executive order that could see the tariff on Chinese goods rise to 245%. While all of this was happening, Trump's team announced that certain electronics would be exempt from these Chinese tariffs. This includes hardware such as computers, laptops, keyboards, and disk drives, as well as other subcomponents. When we saw this, nerds like us were like, "Switch 2?" To which the Commerce Secretary replied, "No!" Believe it or not, video game consoles are not included in this list, as for some reason, they are instead lumped in with pool tables and casino games, which are not included in the exemptions list. And frankly, having seen the state of in-game monetization for most AAA video games these days, lumping them in with casino games is actually kind of on point. So no reprieve for Nintendo, but as we discussed last week, they do have a workaround in the form of their Vietnamese and Cambodian manufacturing capability, which Nintendo smartly invested in during the first Trump administration for precisely the reason we're seeing play out here. Nintendo will likely ship all of its Chinese-made Switch 2 units to anywhere but the US, and ship Switch 2s made in Vietnam and Cambodia to the United States. They'll still cop a 10% tariff, but that's better than 245%. But hey, I could be wrong about that. I'm no mathematician. Worth noting that the Switch 2 will not be releasing in China during this launch window. Now, this could be because of tariffs, since that Chinese-made inventory now has to stretch further to cover the 2/3 of Switch 2 sales that are likely to happen outside of the United States. But Nikkei.com suggests that government regulations may also have something to do with it. According to a translation of their report, Nintendo Switch sales in China have been quite slow since its release back in 2019 on account of the Chinese government limiting the number of games available on the platform. The report also suggests that the prominence of mobile gaming in China has played a big factor in console sales underperforming. These things in combination have seemingly led Nintendo to pull back a bit, biding their time so they can assess how to best move forward with the launch of the Switch 2. Between external demand for Switch 2 outside of China and muted demand inside Chinese borders, it's easy to see why Nintendo are pumping the brakes on the launch. Sticking with Nintendo a little longer, they've been copping a fair amount of flack for their Switch 2 pricing strategies, but by far and away the thing they've been ridiculed for the most is the decision to charge actual money for the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. That's the thing that's basically just a collection of minigames designed to advertise what the Switch 2 can do, rather than bundle this into the console like, Wii Sports was for the Wii and Astro Playroom was for the PS5. Nintendo have instead decided to sell this thing separately for $10. So that's pretty funny, but it got even funnier this week when former Nintendo boss Reggie Fils-Aimé voiced his thoughts on the matter, albeit in a kind of cheeky way. He tweeted a few clips from his IGN interview back in 2022, in which he described his battle to pack in Wii Sports with the Wii, and Wii Play with a remote. The only words to accompany these posts were simply, "The story of Wii Sports pack-in, Wii Play plus remote, and the results." That's basically a haiku right there. Despite the many disagreements he had with Miyamoto to push for these inclusions, here's what he had to say about how these inclusions ultimately paid off.
It was obvious that in the markets where Wii Sports was packed in, that Wii became much more of a phenomenon. Wii Sports itself became much more of a phenomenon. And we did pack the remote with Wii Play, and I think it became the fifth best-selling piece of software in the history of Wii.
Not much else really needs to be said. The effect that Wii Sports had on the Wii sales is obvious, but also it built up a lot of goodwill for Nintendo. Same can be said of Astro's Playroom. It's way better than a free game had any right to be, and its positive reception went on to birth Astrobot, last year's literal Game of the Year winner, and a big win for Sony to say the least. How Nintendo thought they could actually get away with selling this welcome tour remains a total mystery, and when you've got Reggie himself getting in there to have a dig, you have well and truly lost the PR battle. And wouldn't it be really funny if Welcome Tour was some sort of like Blueprints-esque puzzle mystery game that seems really simple on the surface, but then there's like 50 hours of the most mind-blowing puzzles you've ever experienced hidden in there? I think it's unlikely, but it would be extremely funny to have Nintendo humble us in that way. Interesting parallel to this story, Reggie wasn't the only industry vet with things to say about the launch of the Switch 2. Shuhei Yoshida, who recently retired after spending some 30-odd years at Sony, shared his thoughts on Nintendo's current strategy while on the Easy Allies podcast. Here's what he said, quote, "To me, it was a bit of a mixed message from Nintendo. In a sense, I think Nintendo is losing their identity in my opinion. For me, they were always about creating some new experience, like designing hardware and games together to create something, an amazing new experience. But Switch 2, as we all anticipated, is a better Switch, right? It's the larger screen, more powerful processor, higher resolution, 4K 120 FPS. They even had a hardware person starting the stream, like other platforms do, right? And because it's a better Switch, the core premise of the whole Switch 2 is we made things better, and that's something other companies have been doing all the time," end quote. Some very direct thoughts there from an industry luminary, and I think he's just accurately describing the fact that this is a more straight-laced offering from Nintendo than we're used to. And to be fair, it's almost hard to blame them given how badly the Wii U did and how well the Switch has done. Nintendo has well and truly cornered the handheld market with no competition in sight, since the Steam Deck is a very, very niche offering. And I'm sorry, but I just can't see Microsoft taking a bite out of this segment no matter how many stickers they put on a ROG Ally. Nintendo is sitting very pretty right now thanks to the success of the Switch, and as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Earlier in the show, we talked about how Nintendo have taken steps to insulate themselves from the effects of tariffs targeting Chinese-made imports. Well, one company that's far more exposed on that front is Sony, since the vast majority of their manufacturing happens in China, including the manufacture of PS5 consoles. That's led to plenty of speculation about what the price of the PS5 might end up being if and when Sony runs out of its US-based inventory. And it looks like Sony are preparing for that day because the price of the PS5 just went up in a whole bunch of countries, but not in the United States. This is true. Sony just announced the cost of the base PS5 will rise in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. It's going up roughly 10%. For example, the all-digital only console will now jump to 750 Australian dollars, up from 680 Australian dollars. Fun fact, a digital PS5 console now costs the same amount as a disc drive PS5 console cost when the PS5 first launched, thanks to 2 price increases that have occurred since that time. Remember when console prices used to go down as you got later into a generation rather than up? Haters will say it's fake, but Pepperidge Farm remembers. But Sony were not done with their price hiking, because in addition to raising the price of their consoles, they're also raising the price of PS Plus in a number of territories including Canada, Asia, Latin America, and Australia. God damn it, we are getting absolutely reamed down here. The price is going up between 7 and 22% depending on the region, and it's the second price hike the service has gotten since its tier-based revamp in 2022. In raising prices for both their hardware and services, Sony has only alluded to the generic difficult market conditions thing, but the subtext here is that inflation is slowing, production costs appear to be stable. The only ground that's really shifting here is policy, namely the fact that the world's largest economy and a full third of the console video game industry is now charging tariffs between 10 and 245%. And Sony are in the same boat as every other business in that they have absolutely no idea which number is going to be the right one, since Trump's tariff policy changes daily. With all that as background, it is not only possible but highly likely that Sony are increasing prices in other territories so they can eat lower margins in the United States. It's like someone said in the comment section last week, you may not fuck with politics, but politics will fuck with you. To cheer us up, here's some exciting news. The Elder Scrolls Oblivion remaster appears to be just around the corner. Screenshots of the game have been leaked via the website backend for a studio known as Virtuous, a global co-development studio reportedly in charge of this remaster. We can't show these screenshots because Bethesda may get trigger happy with the whole copy strike button, but having seen them, I will say that they look very nice. It appears to be a complete overhaul to the visuals with all new models and textures, bringing it in line with today's graphical standards. Really hoping it still manages changes to retain the atmosphere of the original, as that's something that can occasionally be lost with these remasters, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's also still unclear just how much will be changed aside from the visuals. Things like UI, NPC behavior, combat, and sound design. Honestly, I'd be happy if they didn't change anything and just left it like OG Oblivion, warts and all, with some updated visuals. That's enough for me, I'd be sold. Won't have to wait too long either, as according to Jeff Grubb, the game is set to be shadow dropped as soon as next week. That'll be a nice way to cap off April. Really well timed as well, I think, since there isn't too much dropping right now, and I'd be more than happy to drop a few dozen hours into this bad boy before suiting up for Doom Dark Ages next month. A quick lightning round to finish off. Do expect more adaptation deals based on Microsoft IP, and ideally expect them to be better than the Halo TV show was. Speaking to Variety, Xbox boss Phil Spencer said this, quote, "We learned from doing Halo, we learned from doing Fallout. All of these build on themselves, and we'll have obviously a couple that miss. It's just kind of part of it. But I think what I'd say to the community that likes this work is you're going to see more because we're gaining confidence and we're learning through this," end quote. As far as adaptations go the other way around, he did hint at the possibility of a follow-up to the Indiana Jones game, quote, "We're really happy with Indy and the players and the reception. We do think there's life in that franchise, and I'm just going to leave it at that," end quote. To that I say, hell yes. The Indiana Jones game was one of the best things Microsoft has put out since, I don't know, the age of the pharaohs. So let's hope Machine Games have already got the green light to start working on a sequel. If you're wondering why we keep getting so many gacha games, well, it's because people keep shelling out money for them. A fact made keenly apparent by a survey conducted by Japanese bank SMBC and reported on by Automaton. They surveyed 1,000 people between the ages of 20 and 29 in Japan, asking them about their in-game spending behaviors. 17.9% of them said they were willing to pay to have an advantage in-game. 23.9% of those admitted to regretting spending money on in-game transactions. Craziest stat of all was this though, 18.8% of people, that's nearly 20%, said they once spent so much money on in-game purchases that they couldn't cover their living expenses. That's a really eye-opening figure and proof positive that this kind of predatory monetization is doing real damage, and I do hope to see some firmer regulation that pushes back against this sort of stuff in the future. Would it shock you to learn that Skull and Bones still exists? Well, get ready to have your mind blown, because I'm going to go even further than that and tell you that not only does this game still exist, but Ubisoft are making new content for it, and that content sounds kind of good. Ubisoft have actually announced they'll be continuing support for Skull and Bones with 4 seasons of content slated for this year to bring some pretty substantial updates to the game. This includes things like world tiers, expanded skill trees, a Kraken, and wait for it, land combat. Yes, finally, a pirate game from Ubisoft that doesn't just let you sail around, but also use swords and guns, just like a real pirate. It's an idea so crazy, it just might work. And in fact, it worked like a decade ago with Black Flag. Jokes aside, these are some genuinely nice additions, and I can't help but give Ubisoft a pat on the back for sticking with it. When I reviewed Skull and Bones, I didn't hate it as much as many other people did. I just thought it was really unambitious and uninteresting, and missing crucial elements like being able to get off the ship and fight. If Ubisoft can add that stuff post-launch, then I'm open to take another look at this one. Nintendo's got something new for their players too. You can finally repair equipment in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, but, and you knew there was going to be a but, it's only available on the Switch 2 editions of the game, and it could only be done via a mobile app. That's right, as part of the Nintendo app, players will be able to connect to the Switch 2 while playing Zelda games and receive daily login bonuses, one of which being an equipment repair feature. Alongside this, you'll also be able to access an interactive map, leave notes, and share your Ultra Hand creations. Okay, a bit weird, but weird peripheral gimmicks are kind of Nintendo's whole thing, so I guess we shouldn't be too surprised by this. Is this the innovation that Shuhei Yoshida was talking about? Something tells me it probably wasn't. Finally, some quick sales milestones. The Last of Us Season 2 premiere has kicked off with a bang. According to Deadline, the premiere episode reached 5.3 million viewers in the United States alone, a jump from 4.7 million viewers of Season 1's premiere. Given Season 1 went on to be the largest audience for a debut HBO season ever, that certainly bodes well for the trajectory of this franchise, but we'll see how people feel after Joel has his little golfing incident. The Minecraft movie continues to see huge audience turnouts. It's now hit an estimated $550 million at the global box office. Still doesn't beat out the Mario movie reaching $1.3 billion. It feels like it's only a matter of time. Assassin's Creed Shadows is doing very well for itself, according to industry analyst Matt Piscatella. Quote, Assassin's Creed Shadows has been the best-selling video game in the US for each of its first 3 weeks in market, according to Sakana's retail tracking service. Currently ranks number 2 year-to-date, trailing only behind Monster Hunter Wilds, end quote. Ubisoft desperately needed Shadows to hit big, and it did, but as we've discussed a few times already, no level of success would have been enough to fully stabilize Ubisoft after its lost half-decade, and we can still expect that company to undergo a significant reshaping over the coming months months and years. So what got announced or delayed last week? Man, so much stuff. The now annual AAA Initiative Showcase happened last week, so there was an absolute torrent of trailers and tidbits to sift through. But before we do that, let's flip over some of the more recent ones. EA lifted the lid on their upcoming Star Wars tactics game. It's called Star Wars Zero Company, and it's set to be a single-player turn-based tactics game from a new studio called Bit Reactor, made up of former employees from Firaxis, who obviously used to be the developers behind XCOM and Civilization. There were a few leaked screenshots of this one floating around, which suggest that yes, this is basically Star Wars XCOM, but officially we've only got one piece of concept art to look at before Disney hosts a full reveal at Star Wars Celebration this weekend. From what we can glean though, it's going to be a prequel game. There's a battle droid and a clone trooper, along with a Mandalorian and a fucked up looking alien Jedi. Will there be a playable Jar Jar Binks? God, I hope so. I'm going to make him stand out in the open in every damn map. Biggest reveal for the week was no doubt Marathon, which Bungie showcased this past weekend through both a dedicated reveal stream and an embargo dropping on hands-on coverage from various media and content creators. As you are no doubt aware, I actually got myself over to Bungie to get hands-on with this one, and if you're interested to hear what I think about it at length, we've got the preview on the channel live right now, along with a podcast interview with game director Joe Ziegler. Long story short, there's plenty I like about it, but I think it's still got a long ways to go before its official release on September 23rd. I won't say any more about it now, since you're probably already sick of hearing me talk about this game, but if you do want to play it for yourself and you live in North America, then be sure to sign up to the closed alpha test, which kicks off at the end of this month. 2K is probably going to have some strongly worded feedback for its global marketing teams, because they sure did let loose the release date from Marfi, the old country. They put that information accidentally in a bunch of Steam posts that have now been taken down, but long story short, they were advertising an upcoming PAX panel featuring the developers of the game and mentioned an August 8th release date for all platforms bar Switch. Go easy on them, 2K. Big splashy announcement or not, they got the info out there and they got a lot of attention for doing it, so job well done. All right, now let's dive into that AAA showcase and pull out some of the more notable bits and pieces. If Balatro didn't have enough hardcore gambling vibes for you, then here's a new one, Clover Pit, a roguelite where you're locked in a jail cell with a slot machine and never-ending debt. A bit more to this one, of course. You can manipulate the slot machine to break the rules and have things work out in your favor, and there's a creepy industrial vibe that definitely reminds me of Inscription and suggests that there's a little more going on under the surface. PC only for this one at the moment. That's not as creepy as this one though. Here's a horror game called No, I'm Not a Human, which looks truly anxiety-inducing. The idea is that body snatchers have taken over and you have to interrogate the people you come across, kind of like Papers, Please, and you have to work out whether they're human or not and kill them if they aren't. This had a bit of buzz behind it a while back, and it's just been picked up by publisher Critical Reflex, who put out games like Mouthwashing and Arctic Eggs last year, so that's a pretty nice label to get signed to. No date for this one yet, so stay tuned. All right, let's get some sunlight and color back in here. Rematch is the new game from Sifu developer Slowclap, the game that dares to ask the question, what if Rocket League was played by people instead of cars? Okay, so that was some low-hanging fruit right there, but seriously, the idea is that this is a football game where you focus solely on being one player, worrying about moment-to-moment ball control and being part of a bigger team. They had a playtest for this one last weekend, and I heard good things. They just announced a release date for June 19th for all platforms bar Switch, but you gotta guess it's headed to Switch at some point. The Alters has been on our radar for a long while. This is the survival adventure game where you're stranded on a planet and you have to clone yourself in order to survive while dealing with all the personal and social ramifications of doing that. Yep, you can definitely tell this is made by the developer who made Frostpunk. It's got a release date of June 13th for all platforms bar Switch. A few new games now. Imagine the company behind a chat messenger app made Vampire Survivors more like Hades, and you'd probably get something like Ember and Blade. This one is being developed by Japanese Community Line, and honestly, looks like it could be kind of interesting. A nice celestial art style with lots of satisfying looking effects. This one's due out 2025 for PC only. Next one is a bit further out, slated for 2026. It's called Ikuma the Frozen Compass, and it comes from developers who made a Fox-themed narrative adventure game called Lost Ember. Looks like they're putting that four-legged animal animation experience to good use. This one revolves around a teenager and his dog who gets stranded in the Arctic, with the pitch being that you can play either solo or co-op, with one player as the dog. Sold. Hey, you like Pokemon? You like Minecraft? What if I told you you could have both of these things at the same time? Tomo Endless Blue is basically that, a procedural action RPG that focuses on both creature taming and survival crafting with an anime art direction. Being put together by a new team called Onobi, made up of developers who have worked on games like Fall Guys, World of Warcraft, Fortnite, and even GTA 1 and 2. 2026 for this one. If you like your life sims but wish they were a bit darker, keep an eye on Neverway, a game about managing a farm while also being the herald of a dead god. Nice. This one is a blend of horror, action RPG, and life sim, and it's got some real juice behind it. It's co-directed by the pixel artist behind Celeste. The music is by Disaster Piece, who wrote the score for Fez and Soul Ash, and a bunch more cool stuff. And it's being published by the Among Us devs through their Outer Sloth label. PC only, no date yet. Alright, so how about some guns instead? This one's called Voidbreaker, and it's a roguelite FPS shooter from solo developer Daniel Stubbington, whose last game was a Portal-like first-person puzzle game. This one's being put out by Balatro publisher PlayStack, and it's getting a PC early access release sometime in 2025 before heading to console as well. Last one that caught our eye, if you like being scared and cold and you like trains, there's a co-op survival game called Frost Trail. Survive the cold, survive monsters, keep the train running, and keep yourself fed. And I'm stressed out just listing all that. This one's slated for PC early access in 2026. Skimming through some other release dates now, if you like the sound of those April Fool's dating sims a while back, then you'll be glad to hear that Date Everything is a game where you can date inanimate household objects, and that got a release date of June 17th for all platforms. Shotgun Copman is the new precision platformer from the developer behind My Friend Pedro. That's coming out on May 10th for PC and Switch. And also, Fragpunk is finally getting its console release date after it got delayed at the last second, April 29th for PS5 and Xbox. And finally, did you know they made a Mickey Mouse Metroidvania? It's called Disney Illusion Island, and it's meant to be pretty good. It was a Switch exclusive for a couple of years, but now it's coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox on May 30th. See, I told you there was a lot of stuff this week. You should see the cutting room floor. So what came out last week? Well, have you been hearing as much about blueprints this week as I have been? Half the team here is deep into that shit. Game critics are raving about it all over social media. Games websites are getting pumped full of puzzle guides that I'm told you should absolutely not read. Anyway, this is basically a roguelite version of Myst that's supposedly like way bigger than anyone thinks it is. And last week it shot up to 2025's best reviewed game on both Metacritic and OpenCritic, setting at a 93 and 90 respectively, placing it above Split Fiction and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. GameSpot gave this one 9 out of 10, saying, quote, Blueprints is one of the most memorable video game experiences I've ever had. It is at once accessible and impenetrable, frustrating and euphoric. It's truly one of a kind, end quote. Eurogamer gave this one a full 5 out of 5 stars, praising its constant unraveling. Quote, the richest aspect of the game's extremely rich design may be how many secrets it springs once you've lived in it for a while. It's the pleasure of finding hidden aspects to things you thought you understood in full, pleasure of coming back to something you thought was simple and finding that it's not simple at all, end quote. And finally, PC Gamer gave this one a very high score for that outlet, 92 out of 100, saying, quote, unraveling its many mysteries and solving its multitude of puzzles, several of which I'm still working on even after finishing the game. It's best done if you go in with nearly no information, don't watch videos, don't Google solutions, don't even finish reading this review. Just go play it, end quote. Moving on now, Promise Mascot Agency was probably the second biggest indie that released last week. This one is from the folks who made that vaporwave detective game Paradise Killer. A strong OpenCritic average of 79 for this one, but those who loved it seem to really love it. Here's Digital Trends, who scored it 4 out of 5 stars, saying, quote, there's just so much chaotic energy overflowing throughout Promise Mascot Agency that helps fill in the cracks. It's a positively zany adventure from start to finish, powered by jazzy tunes, historical writing, and unleaded gasoline. Though what's so remarkable about Kaizen Gameworks is its ability to invent the most bizarre world it can think of and deftly acclimate players to its logic within a few hours. That strength is what made Paradise Killer so memorable, and it carries over here. By the end of my adventure, I felt at home in a world that initially felt absurd, end quote. Star Overdrive is that game that looks like Breath of the Wild with 80s hoverboards, a Switch exclusive at launch. This one's landed at a fair 74, with most of the reviews giving it kudos for ambition, but saying it feels a bit samey in more than a few aspects. Here's Nintendo Life, who gave it 7 out of 10, quote, Star Overdrive is a game caught between its inspirations and its own innovations. While it clearly draws from established titles, its world feels too slight to stand alongside them. It's impressive to see such an expansive open world created by a small team of developers, but there isn't a whole lot to do in it. Enemy mobs and structures, both man-made and alien, are few and far between, making the planet feel too desolate at times. That said, there are moments of wonder and plenty to discover, end quote. The Talos Principle Reawakened from Crow Team and developer also launched last week to a mighty 89 on OpenCritic, though we should flag that there are not a lot of critic reviews for this one at the moment. Clearly all the puzzle people play in Blueprints. Still, it seems like a great remaster. Here's Checkpoint Gaming, who gave it 9 out of 10, saying, quote, The Talos Principle Reawakened is already an incredible game made more amazing thanks to meaningful quality of life additions, stellar graphical remastering, and insightful new content in the new campaign and developer commentaries. It's beautiful, tranquil, and pensive, filled with philosophical platitudes, brain-wrinkling puzzles, and sheer tranquil vibes in all the environments. Crow Team have masterfully reworked their beloved puzzle game to be as quintessential as ever, end quote. And finally, Lushfall Photography Sim is the new one from Annapurna, which challenges you to take sick photos with a DSLR in various super nicely rendered real-world environments. It's landed at a mighty 85 on OpenCritic, though there are only a handful of reviews at the time of writing. Here's a nice paragraph from Checkpoint Gaming, who scored it an 85, saying, quote, The game is like visiting someone's memory as you're bound to a specific area, but the map maps are huge and very detailed, while it does feel weird and somewhat scary being the only person wandering around popular tourist spots. Exploring the wildlife and these unique places all by yourself turns them into a delightful nature/travel photography playground, end quote. So what's coming out this week? Well, let's start with the big boy. Harrison Troy Ford Baker is now on PlayStation. That's right, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has dropped on PS5, and you may already be playing it if you pwned it up extra for PS5 Early Access, or, you have an Xbox or a PC. Joining Indie on the 17th of April are the little pink blob things known as Tempopo, the rhythmic puzzle strategy game we featured on the show a couple of episodes back. This one comes from that gang who made Unpacking, and it's kind of like a little Lemmings survival revival thing. This one's out on PC, Switch, and Xbox. This next one looks cool, Bionic Bay. It's an atmospheric physics-based precision platforming game where the main stick is being able to control time, rotate stages, and swap your position with objects in the world. It's also got online speedrunning modes. It arrives April 17th for PC and PS5. Another good-looking side-scroller coming out that day is Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree, which is going to be available on all platforms. This is another game that's trying its hand at the Dark Souls meets Metroid thing, and it seems very fleshed out. 6 different character classes, a really full-on action RPG skill tree, and a big narrative element to boot. The Steam demo for this one was pretty well received, and it's still available if you want to give it a shot. Friday the 18th will also give us Lost Skies, which is one of the Skybound survival crafting games doing the rounds at the moment. This one is from the Surgeon Simulator developers, so it's a big departure for them, and it's launching into Steam Early Access, so wishing them all the best for that launch. Moving over to next week on Wednesday 23rd, we've got the very interesting looking Sunderfolk, which comes from Secret Door and Dreamhaven, the publisher started by Blizzard co-founder Mike Morhaime. This one is a couch co-op turn-based tactical RPG where you play with your phone, kind of like Jackbox meets Dungeons & Dragons. Previews for this one were promising and the concept looks neat. If you're one for regular board game nights, definitely keep tabs on this one. It's hitting all platforms. And finally, on the 23rd, if Lost Skies doesn't seem like your jam, then why not try Old Skies? It's a completely different game, I promise you. This one is a new point-and-click adventure game from an outfit called Wadget Eye Games, who have kept this genre going for a while now. This is one they developed themselves, and it's a story that revolves around working for a for-profit time travel agency and all the headaches and hijinks that come with that. By the way, a little while back, Ed actually interviewed the owner of Wadget Eye, along with other genre luminaries and innovators about keeping classic adventure games alive in 2025. If you want to check it out, I'll leave a link to it below the like button. Here's a game we've had our eye on for a while now. If you played Silent Hill 2 Remake and needed something else to look forward to, then put this on your radar.
Roman. It's time.
Are you her?
This is Post-Trauma, a psychological survival horror game that takes big cues from games of the PS2 era titles from this genre, filled with obtuse puzzles, static camera angles, fight-or-flight encounters, and limited opportunities to save your game. It follows a middle-aged train conductor who finds himself in a messed-up dimension that mixes hell and the real world, and it looks pretty damn promising. This one's being published by Raw Fury, who just put out Blueprints. That's a label with a really fantastic track record, and it's always worth paying attention to whatever they're putting out. This one comes out on April 22nd for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. If you like the look at it and you'd like to check it out over on Steam, we've left a link to it over on our Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This on Your Radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and as always, we start off with the Epic Game Store, and thank God they didn't just stick with those free-to-play currency bundles we flagged last week. They've since added River City Girls, which I'm told is an excellent beat-em-up game that adds some very nice complexities to the genre, so be sure to grab that one before it goes away on Friday. Replacing that this week is Firestone Online Idle RPG. Yes, another idle RPG. And this one doesn't have the Dungeons & Dragons license attached to it and looks exactly like one of those bad mobile game commercials come to life in playable format. Thankfully, it's also joined by some bona fide video game art, Botanicula, which is a beautiful and charming hand-drawn adventure game from Czech studio Animata Design. This one's about a bunch of tree creatures trying to save the forest from parasites, and it comes very highly recommended. On Xbox Game Pass, they're kicking off the second half of the month with the enhanced version of GTA 5, and they've got 2 day one releases coming up, Tempopo, which we've mentioned a few times already, and the RPG Claire Obscure Expedition 33. Definitely loving the look of that one. Some classics being thrown in there too, Far Cry 4 at the end of the month, and early in May they're putting on Modern Warfare 2, as well as indie fishing horror game Dredge. Over on PS Plus, they've added a bunch of stuff to the game catalog for extra and premium subscribers, including Blueprints, Hogwarts Legacy, Lost Records, and Battlefield 1. Premium subscribers also get a couple of new classics, Alone in the Dark 2 for PS1, and the underrated PS2 kaiju battling game War of the Monsters. And finally, this week on Prime, they've got some good ones, including an epic code for the digital dungeon-crawling adaptation of board game Gloomhaven, and GOG codes for Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, and high-speed Metroidvania Berserk Boy, which only came out last year, and it's very good. Our feel-good story for the week relates to someone we've profiled on the channel a few times before, actually. Ginger of Oz is that very special type of tech bro who wastes his time not on crypto or NFTs, but on building sick-as-hell custom consoles. like making a handheld GameCube or putting a Wii into a Fitboard. Well, he's back with one of his most ambitious projects yet, making this random piece of concept art he found a real thing. It depicts a PS1 that's also a crab, aka a PlayStation. And I'm not sure why it was so important to will this particular design into existence, but I'm not arguing. As always, you can find the full build video over on his YouTube channel, but as I'm sure you will agree, the final product is an absolute banger, and the fact that the controls are the claws is absolutely chef's kiss. There is a sad ending to this story, however. Ginger says that after playing the original Final Fantasy VII for the very first time recently, he's been playing through new and classic JRPGs to get caught up on the genre. That all sounds perfectly wholesome until he flashes up this screen and causes 9999 psychic damage. 5 out of 10 for Persona 5, 4 out of 10 for Crisis Core, 1 out of 10 for Final Fantasy VIII. How dare you, Ginger of Oz? It's a goddamn thing, your mods are so good, otherwise you certainly would not be welcome around these parts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the show for the week. I hope you had a fantastic time. Really appreciate you stopping by. As always, if you had fun, please do all the things. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ding the notification bell. Don't forget, we're also available on Spotify now, so if you'd like to watch us over there, and if you're a Spotify Premium subscriber, you won't get any ads when you do that, so that's a really nice way to enjoy it. Appreciate you as always. Busy week coming up for us. Stuff we can't talk about yet, but we are excited to get it out there, so do stay tuned. For now, take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. So I'll admit, I didn't really know much about the world of personal data until I was approached by this video sponsor, Incogni. I knew that big corporations like Apple and Google had my data, but what I didn't know was that hundreds of other companies that I'd never even heard of also have my data, because it had been on-sold by various data brokers. These companies can sell your data to basically whoever they want, including spammers or worse, malicious actors looking to use your personal data to commit identity theft. Now the loophole here is that you can actually technically contact these companies and ask them to delete your data, but not only do you not know who has your data, but there are so many of these data brokers that it would be impossible for you to contact them all. That's where Incogni comes in. You sign up, you enter your details, you grant it the required permissions, and after that, Incogni does all the work for you, setting out hundreds of automated requests to reclaim your data. Take me for example. Incogni has cleared my data from over 66 places that I didn't even know had my data, and had I done all of that back and forth myself, that would have taken me around like 50 hours, which is time that none of us have. I've absolutely noticed a significant reduction in the amount of spam emails and texts that I've been getting, and it just feels nice to know that my data is more secure, since no one wants their personal information being held by some company that you didn't even know existed. It's super easy, super effective, and best of all, super affordable. You can use code SKILLUP at incogni.com/skillup to get 60% off an annual subscription. Take your personal data back and get a 60% discount while doing it by visiting incogni.com/skillup using offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Thanks Incogni for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.